In 1961, President Kennedy called on all Americans to rise to the challenges of the day. He knew that success depended upon the unity of efforts throughout the federal government and the nation. The Greater Boston Federal Executive Board, one of 28 across the country, fosters communication, coordination, and collaboration with federal, state, and local government agencies. This is your federal government, and I am your host, Diane LeBlanc. Hello, everyone. Today we are featuring the United States Marshal Service, which is part of the Department of Justice. Our guests today are the United States Marshal from Massachusetts, John Gibbons, and the United States Marshal from Maine, Noel. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, Diane.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Hi,
you for
Diane.
being here.
Sure.
So Noel, you and I have met before. It's my first time meeting the Marshal from Massachusetts. And I know you are definitely the history buff. So you're going to get the history question. Talk about the history of the United States Marshal Service and its placement within the Department of Justice.
Sure. You know, I'd like to know a little bit about the outfit that I'm joining. And 3 years ago in 2010, when I was appointed to this position, one of the first things I did was to look into where is the legacy and tradition of this agency. Because the United States Marshal Service is coming up on its 224th anniversary this year in 2013. Specifically, that'll be on September 24th, because that's the date in 1789 when President George Washington created the United States Marshals as an official government position of our newly formed, brand new federal government, as part of the Judiciary Act, which also created our federal courts, federal judges, our United States attorneys. And 13 original United States Marshals were appointed beginning on that very day, on September 24th, 1789. Maine was one of those territories, as well as Massachusetts, even though Maine was part of Massachusetts at the time. Sure.
Interesting. So it is such an important part of our country's history. And again, you and I have actually talked about the upcoming anniversary.
Right.
The National Archives, which is the agency that I work for, we have a lot of the records of the United States Marshal Service. And again, going back to that history and the Marshals' involvement, for example, in the Civil Rights Movement. It was the United States Marshals that were on the front line. Talk about that.
Quite often what our federal government has found, particularly our President and the Attorney General of the United States and our federal judges, is that there have been needs to carry out the orders and enforce the laws of the federal government at times when there weren't other agencies that were clearly defined as having the authority and the responsibility and the jurisdiction to do this. Earlier in our history, it was collecting census data. Up until 1870, United States Marshals were collecting census data, as well as taxes and tariffs. Fast forward a little bit into the Civil Rights era, as you just asked about, here was another time when there was great conflict between the states and between the federal government. And what the Attorney General found is that he needed people to carry out the orders of the court, such as when James Meredith wanted to enter Ole Miss as the first African-American student to attend that university. And there was great resistance to that in the early 1960s. And the state authorities weren't going to enforce that integration. Federal authorities needed to. It wasn't the FBI that had that jurisdiction. It turned out by the broad powers of the United States Marshals that U.S. Marshals were turned to protect Mr. Meredith and protect Ruby Bridges in New Orleans when she would be the first African-American little girl to attend an all-white school. And the resistance and the potential for violence and great protest needed to have protection and intervention. And that's where the U.S. Marshals came in again as part of the history that we have in enforcing and advancing civil rights in this country.
So again, a lot of people, when they hear about the different law enforcement entities, they're like, well, who does what? And so, why do you need the Marshal Service? Why wasn't it the FBI? But it wasn't their jurisdiction.
That's right.
It was the jurisdiction of the United States Marshal Service.
And Diane, it's been a very flexible and versatile service to our people in this country for so many years. I mentioned moments ago that the 13 territories and the 13 districts were the original federal judicial districts. But as territories were settled, as we moved across the West in this country, you think of names like Wyatt and Virgil Earp and Bat Masterson. These were real United States Marshals who were charged with, and as well as so many others, who were charged with settling and bringing order to and enforcing law and rights and responsibilities in these newly wild, soon-to-be tamed and settled parts of our country up to the Mississippi River and beyond to the ocean in California. And now there are 94 federal judicial districts in our country.
So actually, 2 centuries plus of history. Obviously, they're not wearing cowboy hats anymore. What are some of the more significant changes in the service?
Well, we have changed with the times, which isn't easy. Anyone who knows what it's like to either work in or deal with a big bureaucracy, a government bureaucracy, change comes slowly and thoughtfully, methodically. But there was a time when United States Marshals were responsible for enforcing prohibition. When that act was first, the original untouchables were U.S. Marshals. But the changes that have come to bear, where it was settling disputes and territories, to today, where we are now primarily responsible for the safety and security of our federal judges and our federal courts, witnesses, as well as producing prisoners to our federal judicial system. Transportation of those prisoners, protection of witnesses as well in the Witness Security Program, sometimes more commonly thought of as the Witness Protection Program. Seizing assets and auctioning those assets off that have been obtained through criminal enterprises, whether it's automobiles, luxury yachts, real estate, cash. This has become such a sophisticated area of criminal justice now, the role of the U.S. Marshal, that really I could go on and on.
You've touched upon a lot of the key areas, functional areas that the current day Marshal Service is responsible for, and hopefully we'll have some time to delve into them a little bit. But,
yes.
But Marshal Gibbons, you are the United States Marshal for Massachusetts. What does that mean in terms of the physical facilities that you're responsible for and the employees that you're responsible for?
That means I'm in charge of the District of Massachusetts. We have facilities in Boston, Worcester, and Springfield. We have over 50 Deputy United States Marshals who are assigned to this district and who are in various missions and functions throughout the Commonwealth. The physical locations, in Boston, we have also 2 courthouses that the United States Marshals serve for protection of those facilities.
So that's what I was going to say. When you say physical facilities, we're talking about courthouses?
Yes.
Okay. So is it district court? Is it bankruptcy court? Is it all of the above? Court of Appeals?
I'll say all of the above.
Okay.
It is district court, bankruptcy court,
Okay.
Court of Appeals.
Okay.
And like I mentioned, there are 4 federal courthouses
in
throughout
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts.
Okay.
Yes.
So what does it mean to be the marshal for the district? What's a typical day like for you?
Typical day for me is up early,
Okay.
and it's a long day. But it is usually I have a very challenging day, and I have some good people in the district who are working for me, and they do a great job. And just like Marshal March mentioned, they're assigned to fugitive investigations. They're assigned to security of the judges. They are assigned to our sex offender investigative branch. The missions are many. They're very diverse, and they're doing a great job.
So is everybody that reports to you, is everybody a deputy marshal, or do you have, individuals who are part of your team across the Commonwealth that have other positions? I mean, I would imagine you have administrative staff. And
yes, we have administrative staff. We have also we have detention officers that are responsible for the prisoners, and we also have court security officers who are contracted, but they work for the Marshal Service, and they're working right there at the physically right at the facilities.
So both of you gentlemen have touched upon really one of your major areas of responsibility: to protect our federal courts,
Yes.
to protect our federal judges, and to protect the witnesses that come before those judges that provide testimony in those courts so that they are safe.
Right.
What-
And also to protect everyone that comes in
Right.
and out of that courthouse every day.
While those proceedings are going on, or just doing business there for
Yes.
whatever reason. What can you tell us? What does that look like? What does it mean to protect our federal judges?
Well, that means we have a judicial security division out of headquarters that strongly support us in the district. We have judicial security inspectors who work hand in hand with our judges, as well as a protective investigative unit that does work with the judges and also keeping the judges secure and safe.
If I could add on to that, Diane, all of these assets and specialists that Marshal Gibbons has just mentioned really do provide insurance. Yes. And it's insurance and assurance that people, the citizens of this country, can speak freely and without fear in our courts. Our system of jurisprudence and the rule of law in this country is so critical to the philosophy of democracy that our judges need to know that they are free and safe to carry out the balance of justice, and that the citizens who come forward to raise their right hand and tell the truth will know that they will be protected and that they don't need to be afraid to tell that truth in the interest of finding restitution, reparation, and justice for victims and citizens who expect that the consistency and the credibility of our courts is always going to be upheld. And that's why it's an important role, what John's just mentioned.
And it is, and I know it's a role that, all of you, anybody who serves in the capacity of U.S. Marshal and all of the people who work for you, it's a very serious role. And just to sort of lighten the moment, again, going back in my responsibilities with the National Archives, we deal with the courts all of the time. We are the holders of many court records, and we deal with clerks, across the country. And whenever you're dealing with a clerk on the phone, they refer to their judge, my judge, my judge, my judge. It's all about their judge. And I was actually visiting a court. This was many, many years ago. And I just walked in and, very happy. Hey, how are you? And all right, I want to know, how do you get a judge? I said. Well, let me just say.
Choice of words, Diane.
Let me just say, my choice of words was met with a lot of, and they were, no, she's okay. She's okay. She's with me. So protecting witnesses, the Witness Protection Program. Anybody who watches TV, you go to the movies, you hear about the Witness Protection Program. That's run by the Marshal Service?
Run by the Marshal Service, right out of the Department of Justice, and it's the Office of Enforcement Operations, right out of the Department of Justice and the United States Marshal Service. We have a division, the Witness Security Division, that work hand in hand with the Office of Enforcement Operations.
And I'm guessing that's all you want to tell me about that?
It began in the 1970s, and there's thousands of people involved in the program. And despite what you might see on television, the Hollywood version, it's not that the American taxpayers are are providing a lavish, luxurious lifestyle forever and ever till the end of time for all of these bad guys or people who have been associated or affiliated with, or good guys who have testified against the bad guys, if you will. It's much more sophisticated than that, where it's helping to keep people safe and getting them rechanneled into their own lives and not to be babysat, if you will, by our tax dollars ad infinitum.
So
and it's very important. It's,
of course.
Very important. I just have to say, in my past life as a Massachusetts State Police detective lieutenant, I had the opportunity to sponsor individuals into the witness security program, and it's very helpful.
Okay. So one of the other areas that we sort of touched upon is your responsibility for transporting and managing prisoners.
Yes.
What determines if somebody's actually tried in a federal court?
Well, it's really the charge that is brought. If it's a violation of federal law, and our U.S. attorney has chosen to bring a case forward against an individual for violating a federal law. And I think it's important to point out that quite often these individuals may also be fugitives. The United States Marshal Service takes into custody approximately 36,000 fugitives every year, which is more than every other federal law enforcement agency combined.
Wow.
Our primary mission, we've talked about a number, again, it's a multi-spoked wheel of our area of responsibility. And a fugitive isn't just someone who, for whom there's an arrest warrant and they just haven't been caught up with yet. A fugitive is somebody who doesn't want to be caught. And they take great pains to conceal their location, their identity, or to evade capture. That takes a very specialized investment of technique, technology, and resources, and smarts. And I'll tell you, that's probably one of the things that I am most impressed with about this U.S. Marshal Service. A fairly small agency, just over 4,000 deputy marshals in this country, 94 U.S. Marshals overseeing and supervising these individuals. And we have a very good track record of very low incidence of violence and injury, and a high track record of arrests. We're the arms and legs of the federal court, Diane. When we get an arrest warrant handed down by a judge, we go get them.
That's your responsibility. So 36,000 fugitives captured
annually.
Annually. That's any sense of what that looks like in terms of New England or Maine or Massachusetts?
John, I mean, you know better. You're busier in Boston and Springfield than I am in Portland and Bangor.
Right.
It's all relative.
But it's all across the country
that
you're doing.
And the world, for that matter.
And we have partnerships with all the federal, state, and local offices.
So let's talk about that. So again, your placement is within the Department of Justice.
Yes.
What is your relationship to the other entities, major entities that make up the Department of Justice, and how do you work with them on a day-to-day basis?
Well, it's communication is the key. Communication. I know here in New England, we have a great partnership, great collaboration, cooperation, and coordination of investigative efforts have been very effective. One thing we have also, and I wanted to mention, every month, the special agents in charge across New England, we all meet. Okay. And we sit down, we meet. Well, I guess I'll say we have lunch as well, but we sit down and we talk about things. And it's great to do that, because whenever a major incident occurs, then we're able to, we know each other.
Well, and
we're able to communicate and work together.
Yeah, and that is so important. I mean, this show is sponsored by the Federal Executive Board, and I know you gentlemen are very much aware of what that means, but it's a communication amongst all federal agencies, because when you do have those critical situations, when you do have, September 11th, 2001, or you do have a situation like the marathon bombings, that's not when you want to be meeting the people that you're going to be working with. You want to have those relationships,
Wanna have
so that's a
those
good thing.
You get the phone call,
Yeah.
you get
You
together.
know who you're talking to.
And you start working the cases.
Yeah.
I can't speak strongly enough and more how important that has been. And we saw that, I think we could all bear witness to the interagency collaboration that we saw with respect to the Boston Marathon incident over the course of several days with local, state, and multiple federal agencies working together in concert. And if you don't have the relationships and the trust and the rapport and the communication in advance before something bad happens, that's a heck of a time to start building trust and getting each other's phone numbers and introductions accomplished when it's in your lap. And this is something that I think is I don't want to say it's unique. I was about to say it's unique, but it's special about the New England relationships that we have here, centered out of Boston. And I just wanted to emphasize that.
So the Marshal Service, part of, a member of the Joint Terrorism Task Force, and that, you know, Joint Terrorism Task Force, it's a term that, again, because of the marathon bombings, people have heard, you know, on the news. That task force came about after September 11th, 2001, and the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, the largest, you know, reorganization of our federal government since the creation of the Department of Defense. How does the U.S. Marshal Service participate on the Joint Terrorism Task Force?
We have someone assigned from our Boston office, assigned to the Joint Terrorism Task Force. And that individual is working and communicating with the FBI, the other federal participants, and as well as state and local participants.
Well, so, and again, that's what's key about that. That's all levels of government. It is run by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. But now, so when you say
there is also a Joint Terrorism Task Force executive board composing of federal, state, and local executives.
And does the Marshals have a seat on that, on the executive
yes.
board? Okay. Okay. So you're sort of designee on that task force. Is that task force something that's just called into action when we have an incident, or are they meeting on a regular basis, or are they, if not meeting face-to-face on a regular basis, are they communicating, you know, via email, via messaging?
Communicating on a regular basis.
It's a standing group, and these groups are present all across the country, Diane, as a result of Homeland Security Presidential Directive after 9/11, as you pointed out. So the investigators and special agents of state and local and federal agencies are working together on these JTTF, Joint Terrorism Task Forces. We have one in Maine. And again, it goes to the ongoing collaboration and communication that's critical when it comes to protecting our country.
So just sort of going back in terms of your responsibility for federal courthouses. Those are also federal buildings. And we have another agency that sort of gets involved in running federal buildings. And then we have the Department of Homeland Security, the Federal Protective Service, which has some sort of a law enforcement responsibility for federal buildings. So where does the responsibility, how much goes to Federal Protective Service, how much goes to the U.S. Marshal Service?
Well, the United States, here I know in Boston, and well, throughout the whole New England region, we communicate daily or weekly with the Federal Protective Service Regional Director, Tim Bain. And I know Tim and myself, we're on the phone. We talk about security issues. Federal Protective Services is doing the external security outside of our courthouses, and in conjunction with the United States Marshal Service, and we're dealing with the interior as well.
Okay, so Federal Protective Service is outside the building, and you are inside the building.
And they support us.
Yep, absolutely.
They support us internally as well.
Okay.
The public is going to see a bit of a different setup depending on which building they're accessing. If it's a federal courthouse exclusively, like the Moakley in Boston, or if it's the federal building in Bangor, Maine, where Social Security and other federal services are found, are there, it's going to be a different experience.
And that is a very important distinction. Some of the federal courthouses are just that, solely a federal courthouse, and then others, there are other federal entities
Co-located.
in that same building and co-located.
That's right.
So if somebody has business in one of these locations, for example, Noel, you mentioned other federal agencies in one of your locations.
Sure.
What do they need to know going into that building that houses a court of the United States of America?
I would say the general rule is pretend you're going to take a flight anywhere from any airport. And security screening, much like the TSA provides at Logan and other airports around our country, you're going to find the same kind of standards of X-ray and security provisions and protections in place. So certainly no weapons, quite often no cameras. We don't allow those in our courtrooms. And no fingernail clippers either. You're going to find that this is also a...
So if you say no cameras, does that mean if somebody comes in with a cell phone, that's going to be taken from them?
Cell phone will be, they have to check the cell phone in at the desk.
You'll be given a little locker
and
for
it
it.
will be, yes,
And the
given
key
a
and the
locker
receipt.
or either a receipt or a tag.
Okay, this is good to know since I'm going to be visiting your courthouse later in the
Yes.
week. But
As a defendant, Diane,
so that's good. Now I've got some business at the U.S. Attorney's Office. So no cell phones because they have cameras and
Yes.
wow. Okay. So
But if you think about that, I mean, a courthouse is a very visible
Right, absolutely.
location and could be considered
Absolutely.
a target for someone that would want to do our country harm.
Okay.
And that's why the investment is important.
So let's talk about maybe some of the more high-profile cases that the U.S. Marshal Service has seen throughout its history, maybe up in Maine, maybe in Massachusetts. So
Sure. Perhaps some of the viewers have seen an old movie called The Falcon and the Snowman. And back in the 1970s, one of those sort of benchmark moments of our history, and again, getting back to my piece of history on this show, was the exchange of a Russian spy for an American spy that took place in the middle of the night, in the middle of a bridge, just like the movie shows, where the U.S. Marshals were called upon to carry out that prisoner exchange with the Soviets long before the Berlin Wall fell and the Iron Curtain came down. So high visibility is something that, in spite of the fact that there are a few now television shows that feature U.S. Marshals
Right.
and movies of days of old that glamorize the old U.S. Marshals, we often won't talk about high-level or high-profile cases on our own. The media does that,
Right.
And sometimes they get it right. And other times we continue to have to maintain our silence for the integrity of the case.
there we go. Anything to add or silence?
Well, no. I have also. I know we've been involved in a lot of cases in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We have the United States Marshal Service. District of Massachusetts has a fugitive task force, and our fugitive task force we have many partners. And Boston Police Department is one of our major partners. And there has been some high-profile murder cases, individuals who have taken off, fled the Commonwealth, and Deputy U.S. Marshals, along with Boston detectives, put their heads together, they strategize, and they go and find their man. And there's been some great captures outside of this state as well as inside the state. I also have to say we had the other day an individual who was wanted for sexually assaulting a teenage girl out in the western part of Massachusetts. And that individual had taken off to New Mexico, California, and also Utah. And the individual was sending back postcards to the police, taunting and harassing the police. and as well as the Marshal office down in New Mexico. And he was indicating, or on the postcard saying, "Catch me if you can." Well, we did catch him.
Wow.
We caught him out in a small town in Utah.
Wow.
Our office out in Utah, they got the phone call. Our deputies drove 5 hours to this small town in Utah, sat and waited, and they snatched him up. So this is some of the great work
Sort of
that
that
our
you're doing.
deputies are
Yeah.
out there doing.
Yeah. Well, sort of, very much related to that, in preparing for our conversation today and looking at the website, I saw an announcement regarding Operation Guardian. And again, it was, I didn't realize that the United States Marshals had such a role to play in capturing sex offenders from across the country. So, I mean, tell folks about this Operation Guardian. It was very impressive.
If I may, sure. If I may, I mean, John Walsh is someone that I think the viewers are probably very familiar with, and a tireless advocate for supporting efforts to find sexual predators, and particularly those that victimize children, and bring them to justice. The Adam Walsh Child Protective Act was passed in 2006, and that act included a specific directive to the United States Marshal Service to be the lead federal agency in supporting local, county, and state efforts across this country in ensuring that registered sex offenders are in compliance. They're working, living, and behaving in the ways that they are required to, whether it's staying off computers or staying away from school areas or playgrounds, as the case may be. And part of that resulted in the creation of the sex offender investigation coordinator positions across all 94 districts. John has those individuals in his office, I do in mine, and they work on that very important mission. And Operation Guardian started in 2010, 3 years later concluded with the top risk offenders who were out of compliance being brought into custody in this country. And it's something that I think we should all be proud of and the public should know.
Absolutely, right. And if I'm remembering the number correctly, 345.
345
so, yeah,
across the country.
Across the country.
Right. Across the country. And
that's,
the most dangerous,
right,
non-compliant
right.
sex offenders
so,
the worst
out
of the worst.
Keeping our children safe.
Right.
Yes.
And
it is very important that we do
absolutely.
that.
I want to point out that when you mentioned safe, Diane, in this period of time since 1789, we have lost 246 deputy U.S. Marshals and United States Marshals in the line of duty, which is a number that's entirely too high. The past couple of years, we have lost deputy marshals and task force officers assigned to us to work in task force groups from our local and state and county partners. It's a contact sport, and it is not an easy job. And I just want to, on this week especially, this is Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Week, where we sit here today in May, and it's a time for us to remember those that gave their lives in the performance of this public duty.
The ultimate sacrifice, and a thank you to those who are currently serving in the position for sure. So something else I learned when I was out on your website, that you have a role to play in certain, again, high-profile cases in managing and selling assets, bringing in, not an insignificant amount of money for the taxpayers. So what's that about?
Well, it's we have asset forfeiture investigators, financial investigators that are assigned to every district and also to every region. And they work right in conjunction with the United States Attorney's Office, identifying assets out there, seizing assets, illegally gained assets, and also any type of judgments that the court has issued, and the individuals do not abide by the judgment, our investigators are working on seizing those judgments.
So, for example, I mean, a high-profile case where I know that the Marshal Service had a role was the Bernie Madoff case.
Yes.
So what are you doing there?
Sure, that's a very high-profile case where I think most people by now know that Bernie Madoff was fraudulently bilking investors and taking their money and living a very lavish lifestyle. That lavish lifestyle included the purchase of multiple luxury properties, vehicles, yachts, jewelry, and assets. Diane, this is not uncommon for someone who is engaged in a criminal enterprise where the laundering of money is part of the crime. And getting cash from people and then turning it into other assets. And that's where the asset forfeiture piece comes in. When the courts order that a property was gained through illegal means, a property was used to conduct criminal activity, and whether it be vehicles for transporting drugs or homes or whatever the case may be. And we have found that there have been some very interesting assets that have come into the possession of the U.S. Marshals Service for their care and inventory, appraisal, and auction. Everything from coin collections to baseball card collections, all sorts of property. But the idea is to turn that property back into cash assets that can be returned to victims.
Absolutely.
Restitution is job one.
And again, it all stems and ties back to your mission to really enforce the court order.
That's right, the arms and legs of the court.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So Noel, when you gave us our history lesson at the beginning of the show, you pointed out that the original marshals were appointed by President Washington.
That's right.
And both of you gentlemen were appointed by our current president.
Yes.
John, you mentioned that you had some experience or position with the Massachusetts State Police.
Yes.
Tell folks about your background, your education, your experience, and what qualified you to be a U.S. Marshal, to be appointed by the President?
Okay. I'm 35 years in law enforcement and over 30 years with the Massachusetts State Police. I was assigned to various leadership assignments on the Massachusetts State Police. I was a unit commander of the Northwestern District Attorney's Office. I was a section unit commander in the Attorney General's office, and also I served as the federal supervisor on the Western Mass Gang Task Force out in, of course, out in Springfield area. And I went to college. I received my bachelor's in political science, my master's in criminal justice from American International College in Springfield. I have attended the FBI National Academy, also the United States Drug Enforcement National Academy, and have a lot of expertise in other areas as well. I have expertise in arson investigations. But to qualify me for this position, I worked a lot of federal cases, organized crime, gang cases. I was not a stranger of the federal court, as well as very familiar and work with the United States Marshal Service here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, as well as also outside of in other districts. So when it came to interviewing and also going before the committee that the late Senator Kennedy composed a committee to interview and vet out candidates, I rose to the top, and now
it's nice to bring
United
35 years of experience to the table. Okay, not to put you on the spot, best job you ever had?
Best job I have ever had?
You're supposed to say this one.
I will say this one, but no, as my career with the Massachusetts State Police. It was a great career, but I moved on, and now this is a great challenge. Yeah. It's been a great job and a great career, and and I got a lot more
Well, there
in
you
front
go,
of me.
another 35 years ahead of you. Noel, how about you?
I'm substantially younger than John Gibbons.
Yeah, right.
So my career only spanned 34 years so far, Diane. But I tell you, I've held positions in local counties and state law enforcement in Connecticut and Maine. I just earned my master's degree last year in 2012 at the University of Maine. I'm a lifelong learner. But most recently, I was the police chief at the University of Maine in Orono.
Okay.
Go Blue. And from there, actually it was prior to there, but certainly there, I invested an awful lot of my time and effort in something I believe in, and that's community policing, where the public and the police are partners in being proactive, preventative, right in the communities. I mean, where the police aren't a part, they're a part. And I'll tell you, I was very gratified that a number of people from the community contacted those who are making the decision to make a recommendation for the next United States Marshal. And I about fell over. My phone rang in my office at the university asking if I would consider being nominated for this position. And so far, this is the best job I've had. But I too, John, have a lot of game left and a lot of mileage ahead. So we'll see what the future holds for both of us.
Excellent, excellent. So we've talked about really the magnificent history of the U.S. Marshal Service. We've talked about how sort of the roles and responsibilities have changed over the last, 2 centuries, and, what your current day responsibilities are. Advice to somebody that might think they want to have a career in federal law enforcement or become a deputy marshal or a marshal?
Well, first of all, I think they need to get their education.
Right.
Need to go to school, go to college, and also get good grades. Very important. It's very competitive out there, the process. And so they need to go and apply themselves, as well as, I would say, internships. Applying for internships with the United States Marshal Service or any other federal agency or state or local law enforcement agency if you have a desire, whatever you have a desire for.
So in terms of the internships, because we know being federal employees, it is a bureaucratic process that somebody needs to go to apply even for an internship. Do interns need to have background checks?
Yes, with the Marshal Service, yes.
Right.
As well as, I think with the other federal
They
state.
do.
Yes,
Yeah,
with the other
yeah.
federal, state, and local agencies.
So some good advice is
Yes.
to stay out of trouble.
Stay out of trouble.
Well, Diane,
If you're going into law enforcement, you stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
and frankly, all the positions, the federal positions, are positions of public trust.
Right, that's exactly
Yes.
right.
And that is,
Yep.
you really did spark the thought that the advice that I want to offer is, you're living your resume now.
That's
Yes.
it. That's exactly it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
keep your nose clean and invest in what's going to be your
Yeah.
future. I tell you, some of the social networking and media exposure that someone can get can be negative. And be very
Absolutely.
thoughtful, be self-conscious and self-aware
Wow.
about the life you're leading now,
Yeah.
because it'll come back to benefit you
Yeah,
or not.
That's right. Kids need to recognize that actions have consequences.
Yes.
And excellent. Well, that is great. We have certainly covered an awful lot of territory. So what haven't I asked you? What is it that you've got inside sort of burning that you want our viewers to know about the United States Marshal Service?
I guess I would say, Diane, that all of our, and again, this is not rhetoric, all of our federal law enforcement agencies are doing a tremendous amount of work, what we call the boots on the ground. The members of, I can easily extend that to say, are members of all federal service that I've come to meet. Of course, it's mostly with law enforcement, but the other business units and elements of our federal government are working very hard. Here in New England, I can speak to. And until I came here, I was never a Fed until about 3 years ago. I didn't quite know what to expect. I looked at the opportunity as a challenge, and I took it on gladly. I was very honored to. And boy, when I got here, I found brave, hardworking, and committed public servants, and and I say that without reservation. I don't need to say it, but I want to, because it's great working with people who care and are doing the job that the public wants to have done, and it's happening here.
I think
I
that's.
concur with
I was going to say, and I think that is a perfect note to end on.
Yes.
I want to thank Marshal Gibbons and Marshal March for joining us and for helping us to better understand the work of the United States Marshal Service. I thank you for watching, and I hope that you'll continue to join us as we feature other federal agencies on your federal government.